the natural selection.
Hello there, I'm Philippa.
And I'm Nathalie.
And thank you for tuning in for this Natural Selection podcast brought to you from the University of Exeter Centre for Ecology and Conservation.
This week we will be looking at the impact of marine macroplastics on sea turtles, following on from our previous podcast on the impacts of microplastics on the marine environment. We will be interviewing Masters Research student Emily Duncan about her paper Plastic and Marine Turtles, a Review and Call for Research, which was co-authored with other Exeter researchers. It found that plastics are actually affecting all marine turtles.
Emily has a degree in conservation biology and ecology from the University of Exeter, and during her time as an undergraduate, she volunteered for 4 summers with the Marine Turtle Conservation Project in Northern Cyprus, gaining valuable field experience and completing her undergraduate project on the effect of anthropogenic light on marine turtle hatchling orientation. Increasing amounts of plastics are entering our oceans due to human population growth, driving consumption and demand. Macroplastics are defined as plastics bigger than 5 millimetres, and they are detrimental to humans, species and ecosystems as a whole. But today, we will be focusing on the negative impacts of macroplastics on marine turtles, what further research needs to be done, and how we can help to reduce our use of plastic and protect not only these charismatic species, but many other species in the marine environment. Interviewing today are Nathalie Swain-Diaz and Hollely.
Hi Emily, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to talk to you about the paper that was recently released. So first of all, why did you focus on marine turtles for your research?
So throughout my undergraduate degree I worked on the Marine Turtle Conservation Project in Northern Cyprus, and I did my undergrad project there on light pollution and hatchling orientation, and we noticed that the plastic pollution was becoming more and more of an issue, and the EU are quite keen to use marine turtles as an indicator species for marine plastics, so that's sort of where it all began.
So what is the scale of marine plastic pollution and why is it such a concern to us?
So it's a huge scale at the moment, and it can cause numerous effects. So it can affect ingestion, entanglement, degradation of habitats and wider ecosystem effects. And because of the new knowledge of the accumulation of microplastics in the water column, it's a major concern because they're available to every different organism because of their size.
Is there anywhere in the world that's particularly bad for this kind of pollution?
There's numerous places. So the gyres, they're quite famous. They accumulate a lot of plastic waste. The Mediterranean, where I work, actually is probably one of the most concentrated areas in the world, and it's sort of estimated now that it experiences 1,000 to 3,000 tonnes of plastic pollution, so it's particularly bad.
So marine turtles, what is it about them that makes them so vulnerable to the impacts of plastic pollution?
Marine turtles are particularly vulnerable because they have quite complex life histories, and their highly mobile behaviour due to their migrations, and also they use numerous marine habitats. We're also quite interested in investigating them because they act as a flagship species for marine conservation, and understanding their vulnerability can raise awareness as well as setting management decisions and policy.
So what are the main ways that plastics are impacting these marine turtles?
Firstly, they can ingest macroplastics. These can cause lethal effects such as blockages, internal injuries and lacerations. But additionally, sublethal effects, for example, dietary dilution can cause starvation, malnutrition and impaired immunity, which is probably what we're more interested in actually, these cryptic effects. And furthermore, when you consider that turtles may be ingesting microplastics, you have to think about the possible bioaccumulation of sorbed possible contaminants. So these plastics can be ingested alongside organochlorines and PCBs, which can create a route for these harmful chemicals to pass into the marine turtles and possibly even cause endocrine disruption.
So why are turtles ingesting plastics? What do they normally eat?
So it's unknown at the moment whether ingestion is accidental, as in a turtle ingests plastic because it's mixed up in their normal dietary items, or whether this ingestion is sort of selective, so they mistake it for a prey item. Marine turtles are primarily visual predators, so therefore we think aspects such as colour and shape will play an important role in why these turtles might be ingesting plastic. Each species has a very different feeding ecology. So, for example, the green turtles mostly forage on seagrass and macroalgae, compared to leatherback, which exclusively feeds on sort of jellyfish. So we need to consider these when we look at whether the ingested plastic is resembling their prey items.
And is there any particular life stage which is more affected by plastics or debris?
Exposure and consequences of plastic ingestion is going to differ between life stages. Definitely the most data deficient life stage at the moment is the pelagic juveniles. So 6 out of the 7 species occupy these sort of convergent zones during this period. And convergent zones are known to accumulate this plastic, so we're concerned that this might act as an ecological trap. They're also really indiscriminate in their feeding behaviour because they haven't gone on to this shift in feeding ecology. So therefore we think they could be particularly vulnerable, but it's very difficult to collect data on this life stage.
Is there a particular species of marine turtle which is more at risk than the others?
So as I've said previously, they have profound differences in their feeding strategies, which could result in potentially different exposure levels for different species. So, for example, a benthic foraging loggerhead is more likely to be consuming contaminated prey with microplastics and their associated pollutants, compared to a pelagic foraging leatherback, which is more likely to ingest large macroplastic pollution, such as plastic bags and balloons.
And has there been much research on the entanglement of marine turtles in ghost fishing gear, for example?
So this is one of the major causes of mortality of marine turtles in areas including northern Australia and the Mediterranean. But despite this, there's really a huge knowledge gap. Only a few studies have looked at entanglement in ghost gear, and very little have looked at land-based sources.
So how are corals and nesting beaches affected by plastic pollution, and what are the consequences for marine turtles?
So coral reefs can be affected by marine debris by suffocation, tissue abrasion, shading and sediment smothering, which can really lead to coral mortality. And furthermore, recently they've been shown to uptake and assimilate microplastics into their tissues. So this could reduce a really important habitat for turtles such as the hawksbill, which live on coral reefs. And when plastics are present on nesting beaches, this can cause obstructions for females trying to get up to lay their eggs and stopping hatchlings from reaching the sea when they emerge from their nests. There's also thought that there's a concern that plastics in the sand may be affecting even sex ratios of sea turtle nests and their success through changing temperature and permeability of the sand.
Right, so you've looked at many effects of plastic. Were there any difficulties when you were doing this study?
It's extremely difficult to attribute death of a turtle directly to plastic. And additionally, the sublethal effects are really, really cryptic. For example, trying to link the possible bioaccumulation of PCBs through plastic ingestion is hard because this could also be caused by water quality issues in the area. So it's quite difficult to pinpoint it to plastic.
What do you think the future looks like for turtles then?
At the moment, I actually think the future looks pretty bleak for turtles when considering plastic pollution. The combination of ingestion of macroplastics and microplastics with their associated pollutants could have long-term reproductive and population effects. And this is not even considering the entanglement and possible wider ecosystem effects that plastic pollution could be having.
So looking to the future, where would you like to see research into plastic pollution going?
Firstly, considering ingestion, I think it would be really important to look at these pelagic juveniles and also look at selectivity and fully investigate the presence of microplastics for sea turtles. And regarding entanglement, as I said, the knowledge gap really needs to be closed, and so we can look at the scale of this issue and also see how much land-based sources are affecting the turtles. Majority of studies at the moment have only focused on ghost gear, so anything from packaging, twine to woven plastic bags can entangle turtles, so it will be important to look at that in the future. And also considering wider ecosystem effects, the distribution of plastics in the sand column, and I think you could even put together mesocosm experiments to see what the presence of plastics will do to critical habitats such as seagrass or coral reefs.
So what's the main message you would like our listeners to take away from today?
So there's clearly adverse interactions occurring between marine turtles and plastic pollution, which may even have the potential to cause population level effects. However, the research into this is in its infancy, and I'd like to see this grow so policymakers can create effective mitigation strategies to confront this pollution.
And is there anything people at home could do to reduce the plastic entering our oceans?
Just awareness, really, and doing your little bit. So there's also the plastic bag ban now, so taking your reusable bags to the supermarket and buying yourself a metal reusable bottle could just really help reduce the plastic that's going into the ocean.
All right, well, thank you very much for today.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Hopefully this and our previous podcast will inspire everyone at home to reduce, reuse and recycle plastics and stop them from entering our oceans.
Okay, great. Well, that rounds up another Natural Selection podcast. Find us on our website, naturalselectionpodcast.weebly.com, where you will find links to our Facebook page, or find us on Twitter at @UOEdPodcast. If you have any questions or would like to suggest a University of Exeter lecturer that you think would make a good interviewee, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. You are listening to the Natural Selection podcast, brought to you by Nathalie, Rebecca and Philippa. Tune in next time for another instalment of the Natural Selection. Goodbye.
Bye.